Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories. The afternoon sun was doing that lazy, late September dance through the leaves of the old oak tree outside my window, painting shifting patterns on the living room wall. I was halfway through an article about the latest rose hybrids, a gentle passion of mine since my husband, Tom, passed a few years back. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that settles into a house when it's just you for most of the day. My son, Daniel, he's 32 now, lived with me. He'd moved back in after his engagement ended abruptly last spring. It was supposed to be temporary, a soft place to land, but months had stretched on, and we'd fallen into a rhythm that was comfortable if a little too predictable for both our sakes. I sometimes thought. He was a good boy, Dan. Always had been. Quiet like his father in many ways, but with a current of something deeper running beneath that calm surface, something I occasionally glimpsed but never fully grasped. I just turned the page, admiring a particularly stunning apricot-colored bloom, when his voice came from the direction of the kitchen. "Mom, can you come in here a sec?" It wasn't an urgent call, not the kind that makes your heart leap into your throat thinking someone sliced a finger or the oven's on fire. No, it was softer than that, almost hesitant, and that, more than anything, snagged my attention. Daniel wasn't usually hesitant. He was direct, even when delivering news I might not want to hear, like the time he announced he was dropping pre-med for graphic design. My initial shock had given way to a quiet pride over the years. He was talented, really good at what he did. I put the magazine down on the ottoman, the glossy pages whispering against the fabric. "Coming, honey," I called back, my voice a little creaky from disuse. I pushed myself up from the worn armchair, the one Tom always used to sit in. It still held the faint, comforting scent of his pipe tobacco if you buried your face in the cushions, or maybe that was just my memory playing tricks. As I walked down the short hallway, the scent of old wood and lemon polish from my morning's efforts gave way to something else. Coffee, definitely. Daniel was a fiend for the stuff, a habit he'd picked up during those late-night study sessions in college. But there was another aroma, too, fainter, something warm and almost baking. That was unusual. Daniel's culinary skills usually peaked at scrambling eggs or grilling a steak. Baking was my domain, a legacy from my own mother. I paused at the kitchen doorway. The room was bathed in that same gentle afternoon light, filtered now through the yellowing gingham curtains I kept meaning to replace. Daniel was standing by the central island, his back to me. He was wearing one of his typical outfits, a faded band t-shirt and jeans. His shoulders seemed a little tense, though. He had his hands resting on the butcher block, his head slightly bowed. My heart gave a little squeeze. He looked so much like Tom from that angle, the set of his shoulders, the way his dark hair curled just a bit at the nape of his neck. "Everything all right, Dan?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. My mind, as mothers' minds are prone to do, was already flipping through a Rolodex of potential problems. Did he lose his freelance gig? Was it about Amelia, his ex-fiancée? Again? Had he dinged the car? He turned around, and I saw he was holding a mug in one hand, the other still resting on the counter, as if for support. He offered me a small, tentative smile. "Yeah, Mom. Everything's, well, everything's something. Can you sit down for a minute?" Now, the subtle alarm bells started to chime a little louder. Sit-down conversations were rarely about trivialities. The kitchen table, a sturdy oak piece that had seen countless family meals, homework sessions, and heart-to-hearts, was just a few feet away. I pulled out one of the ladder-back chairs, its familiar scrape against the linoleum a strangely loud sound in the suddenly charged atmosphere. "Okay, I said, settling in and folding my hands on the tabletop. I'm sitting. What's on your mind, sweetheart? I tried to meet his eyes, but he was looking down into his coffee mug, swirling the dark liquid. The silence stretched for a moment, punctuated only by the hum of the old refrigerator in the corner, a sound so constant I usually didn't even notice it. He took a deep breath, the kind you take before you're about to dive into cold water. Then he lifted his head, and his eyes, a deep hazel, so like my own, finally met mine. There was a vulnerability in them I hadn't seen in a long, long time, not since he was a little boy confessing to breaking Mrs. Henderson's prize winning gnome. Mom, he began, his voice a little rougher than usual. There's something I need to tell you, something important, and I'm not sure how you're going to take it. He paused again, and I saw his knuckles were white where he gripped the mug. The air in the kitchen felt thick, heavy, with unspoken words. I could see a faint sheen of perspiration on his forehead, my own breath caught in my chest, a mix of apprehension and a strange, burgeoning curiosity. What on earth could it be? He took another breath, then let it out slowly. It's about, it's about me and what I've been figuring out. He looked away for a second, towards the window, as if gathering courage from the sight of the familiar backyard, the bird feeder swaying gently, the late roses still clinging to their color. Then he looked back at me, his gaze direct, almost painfully honest. I wanted you to hear it from me first, before anyone else. The way he said it, the gravity in his tone, told me this wasn't just a casual update. This was something big, something that had clearly been weighing on him. And as I sat there, waiting, a part of me braced for impact, while another quieter part simply opened, ready to listen. My son, my quiet, thoughtful Daniel, had something to share, and whatever it was, I knew deep in my bones that this moment was going to change things. The scent of coffee was suddenly sharper, the hum of the refrigerator louder, as the ordinary kitchen around us seemed to hold its breath, waiting along with me. Daniel finally set his coffee mug down on the island with a soft clink that seemed to echo in the stillness. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture I remembered from his teenage years, one he usually managed to suppress these days. So, he began, his voice still a little unsteady. You know how I've been, a bit off, maybe since Amelia and I broke up? I nodded slowly. A bit. I understated. He'd been more than a bit off. He'd been withdrawn, spending long hours in his room, the one that used to be his childhood bedroom, surrounded by the ghosts of model airplanes and rock band posters. He'd lost weight, and there were shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there before. I'd attributed it all to a broken heart, a perfectly natural reaction to a called-off wedding. I tried to give him space, to be there without hovering, offering comforting meals and quiet companionship. Well, he continued, picking at a loose thread on his t-shirt. It wasn't just about Amelia. I mean, that was awful, don't get me wrong. It really was. But it was also a catalyst. It made me think about a lot of things, about what I really want, who I really am. I kept my expression neutral, though my insides were starting to churn a little. Okay, I said, encouraging him to go on. I could see how much courage this was taking him. The last thing I wanted was to make it harder. He looked up, and his eyes were earnest, searching mine for understanding before he'd even fully spoken. For a long time, Mom, I felt different, not in a bad way, just not quite fitting the mold I thought I was supposed to fit. Or maybe the mold everyone else thought I fit. He paused, seeming to choose his words with immense care. I've been trying to be the person I thought I should be, the person who would make everyone happy. Dad, Amelia, my heart ached a little at that. Had I made him feel pressured? Had Tom? We'd always just wanted him to be happy, to be fulfilled. Oh, Daniel, I murmured, we never wanted you to feel like you had to be anyone but yourself. A faint smile touched his lips. I know that, Mom. Logically, I do. But it's complicated, isn't it? The expectations we put on ourselves, the ones we perceive from others. He took a deep breath. The thing is, after Amelia left, when everything just sort of fell apart, I realized I couldn't keep pretending, not even to myself. He pushed himself away from the island slightly and walked over to the small kitchen counter where the cookie jar usually sat. Except today, instead of the familiar blue ceramic, there was a plate covered with a clean tea towel. He gestured towards it. I baked something. This was so unexpected, such a non sequitur from the serious turn of the conversation, that I blinked. You baked something? He nodded, a shy, almost boyish look on his face. Yeah, it's sort of part of this, part of what I want to tell you. He lifted the tea towel with a little flourish, revealing a small, perfectly formed apple pie. The crust was golden brown, latticed neatly, with a sprinkle of sugar glistening on top. The aroma, which I'd faintly registered earlier, now filled the kitchen more distinctly. Sweet apples, cinnamon, warm pastry. It smelled heavenly. It looked professional. Daniel, I said, genuinely surprised. This is beautiful. When did you learn to bake like this? My pies were good, homey, but this had a finesse to it. I've been teaching myself, he said, a touch of pride in his voice. Online tutorials, old cookbooks I found at the library. Late at night, mostly, when I couldn't sleep. He looked at the pie, then back at me. It's one of the only things lately that's made me feel calm, centered, like I'm actually creating something real, something good. I was still trying to connect the dots. The breakup, his feeling different, the secret baking. That's wonderful, honey, that you found something you enjoy so much. But I get the feeling the pie isn't the main story here. Is it? He shook his head, his expression turning serious again. No, it's not. The pie it's a symbol, I guess, of what I've realized I need to do. He walked back towards the table, pulling out the chair opposite me and sitting down. He leaned forward, his hands clasped on the table. Mom, my job, the graphic design work. I'm good at it, I know, and it pays the bills. But it's not it's not my passion. It's not what makes my heart sing. He hesitated. This, he gestured vaguely towards the pie, then more broadly around the kitchen. This feels more like it. My mind raced. Was he saying he wanted to quit his stable, well paying career in graphic design, a field he'd spent years building, to bake pies? The thought was so out of left field that I struggled to process it. My Daniel, the quiet, intellectual one, wanted to be a baker? Images flashed through my mind. His father's pride when Daniel landed his first big design contract, the relief I'd felt knowing he was financially secure. This was a lot to take in. You want to bake? I asked, trying to keep the surprise and perhaps a flicker of dismay I couldn't quite suppress, out of my voice. Professionally? He nodded, his gaze unwavering now. Yes, I know it sounds crazy. Maybe it is crazy. But for the first time in I don't know how long, I feel like I know what I'm supposed to be doing. I want to open a small bakery. Mom. A little place, cozy, where people can come for good, honest food. Pies, cakes, bread. Things made with care. He looked down at his hands. Things made with love, I guess. The words hung in the air between us. A bakery. My son, the graphic designer, wanted to be a baker. It wasn't what I'd ever envisioned for him. Not at all. I thought of the long hours, the financial uncertainty, the sheer physical labor involved. It was a world away from the clean, cerebral environment of his design studio. I opened my mouth to say something, perhaps to voice some of those concerns, to urge caution, but then I saw the look on his face. It wasn't just enthusiasm. It was a deep, quiet conviction, a light in his eyes I hadn't seen since he was a boy, showing me a particularly intricate Lego castle he'd built, his whole being radiating with the joy of creation. He was vulnerable, yes, laying this unexpected dream at my feet, but he was also, in that moment, more truly himself than I'd seen him in years. The subtle tension that had been humming in the kitchen shifted, replaced by a profound sense of significance. This wasn't just a whim. This was his heart. I took a slow breath, my gaze drifting to the pie on the counter. It was, indeed, a beautiful pie, and he had made it. He had found solace and joy in its creation during a time of personal turmoil. A bakery. I repeated softly this time, letting the word settle. I looked back at Daniel, really looked at him, at the hope shining in his eyes, the nervous anticipation in the set of his jaw. This wasn't just about changing careers. This was about him finding his way back to himself, or perhaps finding the truest version of himself for the very first time. The initial shock was beginning to recede, making way for a wave of more complex emotions. There was fear, yes, for the uncertainties he would face, but there was also a burgeoning sense of pride. It took immense courage to admit your current path wasn't the right one, especially when it seemed so secure, and even more courage to choose a different one that spoke to your soul. So I began, my voice a little shaky but warm. This is what you've been figuring out. This is the important thing. He nodded, a hopeful look dawning on his face. Yeah, Mom, this is it. I know it's a big change, a huge leap, probably not what you expected from me. He gave a small, self-deprecating laugh. It's not what I expected for myself until recently. I reached across the table and placed my hand over his clasped ones. His skin was cool, but his grip, when he instinctively tightened it around mine, was firm. Daniel, I said, it's certainly a surprise. I won't pretend it isn't, but what I expect or what anyone expects isn't what matters most here. What matters is you, honey, your happiness, your passion. I squeezed his hand. Tell me more about it, about this bakery. Have you thought it through? What kind of place do you imagine? A visible wave of relief washed over him. His shoulders, which had been hunched with tension, relaxed a fraction. The smile he gave me this time was brighter, less clouded by anxiety. I have, Mom. I've been doing a lot of research, actually sketching out ideas for the layout, thinking about a name, even working on some recipes. He pulled one hand free and gestured animatedly. I envision a place that feels like coming home, warm, inviting. Maybe some old wooden tables, mismatched chairs, the smell of fresh bread and coffee always in the air, a place where people can connect, or just sit quietly with a good book and a piece of pie. His eyes sparkled. Like this one, he added, nodding towards his apple pie. I was thinking of calling it the evening rise, because I do my best baking when the world is quiet. The evening rise. It had a nice ring to it. As he spoke, I could almost see it, the warm glow spilling from the windows of a small shop, the comforting aroma, the quiet hum of happy customers. It was a lovely vision, and it was his, born from his own period of darkness, his own quiet rising. That sounds really lovely, Daniel, I admitted, and it did. The fears were still there, lurking in the back of my mind, the practicalities, the risks, but overshadowing them was a growing sense of admiration for his courage and his clarity of vision. He wasn't just running away from something, he was running towards something, something he clearly loved. I know it won't be easy, he continued, his tone more serious again. There's so much to figure out. Finding a location, getting funding, all the permits and licenses. It's daunting, but for the first time in ages, I feel excited about the future. Truly excited, not just going through the motions. He looked at me, his gaze direct and hopeful. What do you think, Mom? Am I completely crazy? I leaned back in my chair, considering his question. Was he crazy? Maybe by some people's standards. To give up a secure, modern career for the demanding, often precarious life of a small business owner, especially in the food industry? Perhaps. But then I thought of my own life. I'd married Tom, my childhood sweetheart, right out of high school. We'd built a life together, simple and steady. I'd been a homemaker, raised Daniel, tended my garden. There were things I'd dreamed of doing, small ambitions I'd set aside for the sake of family and stability. Not with regret, not really, but with a quiet acknowledgement that life is full of choices and compromises. Daniel was choosing a different path, a path of passion, perhaps a path of greater risk, but also potentially of greater personal reward. Who was I to call that crazy? No, Daniel, I said, finally, my voice firm. You're not crazy. You're brave. It takes a lot of courage to listen to your heart, especially when it's telling you to take the less beaten path. I smiled, and honestly, anyone who can bake a pie that looks and smells that good is definitely onto something. His face lit up. Really, Mom? You think so? I do, I affirmed. I think it's a wonderful idea, if it's what you truly want, and I think you should go for it. I paused, then added, and if you need someone to taste test your experiments, you know where to find me. He laughed, a genuine, happy laugh that made my own heart feel lighter than it had in months. That's a deal, Mom. Chief taste tester. It's a very important role. He stood up and went to the counter, carefully cutting a slice of the apple pie. He placed it on a small plate, grabbed a fork, and brought it over to me. Here, he said, setting it down. The first official taste test for the evening rise. The pastry was flaky, the apple filling perfectly spiced, not too sweet, with a hint underscore of something I couldn't quite place. Cardamom, maybe? It was without a doubt the best apple pie I had ever tasted. And as I savored that first bite, looking at my son, his face alight with a mixture of pride and nervous anticipation, I felt a profound sense of connection, a deep welling of love and admiration for this wonderful young man who was, in his own unique way, finally truly coming into his own. The kitchen, which had earlier felt charged with unspoken anxieties, now seemed to glow with a warm, hopeful light. This was more than just a conversation about a career change. It was a moment of profound sharing, of trust, of a son allowing his mother to see his truest self, his deepest dreams. And in that moment, I knew our relationship had subtly shifted, deepened, moving into a new and even more meaningful chapter. The unexpected news he delivered had indeed been something I wouldn't have believed just an hour before, but it was also, I realized, something incredibly special. The aroma of the pie, the lingering warmth of our conversation, seemed to settle comfortably into the familiar corners of the kitchen. Daniel watched me, a hopeful architect awaiting the verdict on his first blueprint. I took another bite, slowly, deliberately letting the flavors meld on my tongue. Daniel, I said, setting the fork down, this is exceptional. Truly, if all your baking is this good, the evening rise will have lines around the block. A wide grin spread across his face, erasing the last vestiges of his earlier anxiety. You really think so? I know so, I affirmed, "Your father, he always said, if you're going to do something, do it with all your heart or don't do it at all." And I can taste the heart in this, Daniel. I really can. Tom had been a man of simple philosophies, but they were usually spot on. Daniel's eyes softened at the mention of his father. I remember him saying that. Usually, when he was trying to get me to mow the lawn properly, he chuckled, a nostalgic warmth in his voice. But yeah, I've been thinking about him a lot through this, wondering what he'd say. "He'd be proud, Daniel," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Proud of your honesty, proud of your courage. And he would have loved this pie, no doubt about it." Tom had a legendary sweet tooth, especially for anything apple. We sat in comfortable silence for a few moments, the shared memory of Tom a gentle presence between us. The late afternoon sun was now casting longer shadows, and the kitchen was filled with a golden hue. It felt like a sanctuary, this ordinary room, suddenly imbued with the significance of dreams shared and support given. So I began again, my mind already turning to the practicalities, but in a supportive, not a dismissive way. "What's your first step? Do you have a business plan sketched out?" Daniel nodded eagerly, his energy rekindled. Sort of, I've been jotting down a lot of notes, cost projections for ingredients, potential overheads. I've looked at some small commercial spaces for rent online just to get an idea of what's out there. There's a little storefront over on Miller Avenue, the one that used to be the old bookshop. It's been empty for a while. It's small, but it has character. I knew the place. It was in a decent spot, a little off the main drag, but with good foot traffic from the nearby park and library. It would need a lot of work to convert into a bakery, wouldn't it? Ovens, ventilation, all the health code requirements. "Definitely," he conceded. "That's the biggest hurdle, I think. The startup capital. I have some savings from freelance work and, well, some of what Amelia and I had set aside for the wedding." He looked down for a moment, a shadow passing over his face, but it was fleeting. "But it won't be enough for a full fit out and initial operating costs." This was the part that always worried parents, the financial tightrope walk of new ventures. I chose my words carefully. "Have you looked into small business loans or grants for new entrepreneurs?" "A little," he said. "It's a bit overwhelming, to be honest. The paperwork, the criteria, that's the part where my graphic design brain sort of short circuits. I'm better with visuals than spreadsheets." He gave a wry smile. An idea began to form in my mind, a quiet stirring of possibility. Tom and I had been careful with our finances. He'd had a good life insurance policy, and I lived simply. There was a nest egg, one I'd mentally earmarked for rainy days, or perhaps to help Daniel with a down payment on a house someday, if he ever resettled. But what was a dream if not a worthy investment? Especially a dream pursued with such genuine passion. "Daniel," I said slowly, "your father and we always believed in investing in people we trusted. And I trust you. I trust your talent and your determination." I paused, taking a breath. "I have some savings, money that was just sitting there. Really, perhaps we could talk about me being an investor, a silent partner, if you like." His eyes widened, first in surprise, then with a dawning, almost incredulous hope. "Mom, are you serious? I I couldn't ask you to do that. It's your security. And what better security is there than investing in family in happiness?" I countered gently. "It wouldn't be all of it, of course. You'd still need to explore other avenues. But maybe it could be enough to get you started, to make that little shop on Miller Avenue a real possibility. We'd need to treat it properly as a formal loan or an investment, draw up papers. It would be your business, your